one-man meeting?
I think it's going to be.
I hope it's a one-man meeting.
Sorry, I'm late.
You gotta get that Kmart remodel so we get the new winners in there.
You ready, Mr. Chair?
I'm ready.
Welcome everyone, starting with our customers, prayer and the pledge. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the blessings you bestowed on our community. I ask that you continue to bless this community, and especially at this time of year, watch over our employees as they go about our business out in the community, watch over this, the folks in this community that are in need, and we ask that you would watch over them and help us to be helpers to them. We ask that you would bless our commission with the wisdom and guidance, and our leadership team as we do the business of this utility. And that you would bless this food and nourish our bodies, and bless us as we do your work. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have a fairly light agenda, which is a good thing. Before we get started, I want to say that the City Commission reappointed JT for another term. I'm very appreciative of that. I appreciate JT. We're glad to see that moving forward. And our first item is KYMEA and ACES recommendation. And as we've had a little bit of discussion, I didn't have a PowerPoint, just kind of go over. When KYMEA chose their power service provider, when they chose ACES, it opened up opportunities for us to work together to see if we could do something that was mutually beneficial. And to give you the background in the memo, our ACES contract this year is about $675,000. It's got a 3% escalator on it, so it goes to about $695 for fiscal 20, which we were working on renewing it. It expires on May 16th of 19. We were working on renewing that before this happened to get us to the end of Elmer Smith power production and our participation in the wholesale markets. But when KYMEA came on, or they came on board with KYMEA, ACES and KYMEA and OMU, I had some discussions about how could we to roll our services under the KYMEA agreement to save us money and to benefit the KYMEA members as well. So, long story short, we were able to work that out. Very pleased with how that worked out. ACES was very agreeable. You know, one of the issues that I was concerned about is ACES is going to be serving KYMEA all their services out of their home office in Carmel, outside Indianapolis. And our scheduling and our power trading, our day-to-day services are done out of the Maple Grove, Minnesota office, which has been that way for day one. They've agreed to continue our services out of Maple Grove, the services that are already there, and then of course we also have services that are done out of the home office. So that was an important point for us that was ironed out fairly quickly. So the bottom line is we can next year we were projecting to spend combined our $295,000 KYMA membership assessment, which is what was projected, plus the $695 for ACES, which puts about total for fiscal 20 about $990,000. We're able to come to an agreement with KYMEA to roll our services under the KYMEA ACES agreement for a total assessment for this year of what was that number? $233,000. I'm rounding off, and then for next year it would go to $247,000. The good part about that is for this year our ACES fee will stay the same for this fiscal year, but that's a savings off our existing current fiscal year KYMEA assessment of $295,000. It goes to $233,000. Then next year all we'll be paying is $247,000 to KYMEA. The ACES fee will go away, but the ACES services will remain. So next year it's a total savings for the 2 fiscal years of about $800,000. So I think this is a win-win. KYMEA gets to spread some of their costs out over this year. This will take us, the term of the agreement will take us till June 1 of 2020, which is when we expect to shut down Elmer Smith. It'll start the day after. Our ACES agreement expires at midnight. This will pick up right then, so there won't be any disruption. Midnight on May 16th. We worked through a lot of details. We have a draft agreement, or actually an agreement ready to execute upon your all's approval. So I recommend that we approve and save some money and continue with the same service we've had before.
I only have one question. I assume that you have somebody in place that's going to oversee what KYMEA is doing, what they're doing there. Our perspective is we're just not.
No. That will-
And I just want to make everybody clear.
Tim and I are those somebodies.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that somebody's there. We just not have-
And we've got a month under our belt working with Rob through KYMEA. It's somewhat just like old times. He's on our calls every day. We talk to him. I'm pretty comfortable that we won't have the
And
issues.
I assume he's adopted our marketing strategy that we've approved.
The agreement that we have requires them to follow our energy risk management policy. And Rob is well aware of that. He wrote a good part of it. So,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Go ahead.
Well, I'm really pleased with this. This is a substantial savings. And what you just said, it's worth noting that market analysis services is part of that. That's included.
I'll echo that, but just out of interest, what is the total amount that KYMEA agreed to pay ACES for all the members of KYMEA? What is that fee? Just out of
it
interest.
changes every year, but it's in the $350,000 a year total fee. So,
Are they counting on us being part of that?
No.
Because if we're not part of that, then all the other 9 members or 10 members would be paying that. Is that true?
right, when they first started this, they were they were assuming that we would continue to go our separate way on that. Because from the beginning, if they had chosen somebody besides ACES, then we were not gonna come under and change our provider. So they were assuming that we would not be a part of that.
Okay.
The first thing that what really spurred this conversation is when we saw what we were paying ACES and KYMEA is paying ACES under virtually identical agreements. And, we started talking with ACES about reducing our costs to that level, and then that evolved into, why don't we just roll into KYMEA and reduce our costs?
So what we'd be paying is basically our prorated share of that $353,000.
The way the structure is with KYMEA, I should have mentioned that, we'll be paying what they call our membership fee, which is 12 cents a megawatt hour. For our megawatts, that's roughly $100,000 of the 233 to 247. The remaining is our share of what they call the shared services, which is primarily the ACES contract. So that's our share of ACES, so that adds up to our fee. Then at the end of fiscal 21, when we're out of the power market, then we would choose to not take those services, and we go back to just a membership fee, or if there are other services that KYMEA has at that time we want to take, we select them kind of on an a la carte basis.
So KYMEA's agreement with ACES is on a year-to-year basis?
It's a 3-year agreement with options to renew.
To renew, so when we're out of it, we still wouldn't be obligated to pay something they already agreed upon or something?
No, we have no obligation that passes through to ACES.
That's just the,
12 cents a megawatt would be $120,000 membership, give or take here.
Yeah, it's 800 something megawatts, so yeah, that would be moving forward after this is over. Yeah, that's what
are
we're
there any other members of the KYMEA that are municipalities that are members of that generate their own electricity?
Paducah has they're not a member.
Paris has
Paris
diesel.
and doesn't Berea have diesel? Not Berea, no, it's Paris. Mike Withrow, it's Paris. They have diesel, but it's small amount.
So they're marketing a lot of the PVA, the hydroelectric?
The SEPA, yeah.
SEPA, rather? Yeah. That's probably what it could, for everybody that hasn't a lot, that's probably what they're marketing for. Okay, just to, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a probation probationary civil service, we are short meter readers, and Michael is happy to get one on board, so we typically would hold this to the regular meeting, but we'd like to get this gentleman get started, so it's just a civil service appointment, or probationary appointment for a new meter reader.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the last thing for the open session is our quarterly telecom update from Mr. Chris Pointer.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, we hit a pretty good milestone for our residential rollout. We had our 500th customer there. You can see that young lady that we connected. We got her a gift basket from Trunnell's. Wanted to use the local vendor to show our local support for services. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Here is the status of our commercial connects. You can still see there's a good positive slope of the line. There was a dip over here in November. The good news is that we have some pending installations this month that will kind of offset that. It's still a little bit light, but it's the holidays. The thing that concerns me the most, though, of course, is still this red. I don't like the red. The blue's, yeah, okay, it's good. But as you can see, we've had, what's that, about 10 or so disconnects in the last 3 months.
Do you know why?
And that's what I was just going to talk about. Those disconnects, I mean, every single disconnect we take a look at, why did this happen? How could we have done this differently? Really, the vast majority of those still tend to be the business went out of business. It just discontinued operations. We had 3 of those circuits, as a matter of fact, was a vendor that provided services to some area institutions here over our point-to-points, and they lost that contract. And so now someone else is providing those services, and so they no longer needed our point-to-points. And quite honestly, they kept them in place a lot longer than they really should have. So those were disconnected. 2 of them, though, are the kind of disconnects I don't like to hear, which are the, hey, I got a better deal, you know, it still thinks kind of expensive, and so I'm going to switch over to so-and-so. So we're definitely keeping track of those. And we are, in an upcoming work session, as you requested, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we might be able to reposition some things and take a look at, you know, clearly this is an enterprise level service. So there's residential service, there's small business service, and there's enterprise level. What we have been doing for a very long time is offering enterprise level business services. And some small businesses have creeped into that, and now they're starting to trickle out of it. So the discussion will be a little bit about, let's take a look at each of those segments, what's the right offering for those segments, and then do we want to be in that space or not, and how we could go about doing it. There's the growth in bandwidth, too. Voice services, we had some pretty good installations September, October. Nothing in November, but we do have some in this month here. So we're just shy of, what, almost 400, up there about 400 active lines, and that is a very good business for us. I'll have an update to international calling rates for you in January. Our wholesale vendor is making some changes there, very minor changes, and I'll have to, of course, pass those along to our customers. And there we go, residential internet. One thing I want to point out is nice growth on the overall growth curve. But here in November, a little bit light. We didn't do installations over the Thanksgiving weekend, so that was a little piece of that did not happen. We're up to like 517 or something now, and 17 pending installations for this month. And as I talk about on the next slide,
What do you, the residential disconnects? Moving.
Again, every one of those we look at, and we because you can see there's really not that many, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is pretty good. They move out of the area. They let us know, I'm moving over to so-and-so, and you still don't provide service over there, so we say, well, yeah, we understand that.
Those people that were 50 megabytes versus 1 gigabyte or versus 100.
Yeah.
Is there any particular group that goes for one or goes for the other? Is it just sort of random?
No, it's very, and I have all the statistics on that of how many we have of each. The vast majority, probably 80% or so, are the 50 meg customers.
Yeah.
And it's because it's affordable, and it does what they need, and they usually want to, they're very cost conscious, so they're trying to cut the cord and not have to pay a video cable bill. So they're streaming video services, usually through a Netflix, a Hulu, things like that. With the recent digital conversion of Time Warner, or Spectrum, we have had a lot of people talking to us about, well, how do I still get video channels but have to pay all of that and buy the box and whatever. So conversations about, like, I am an internet-only customer with Spectrum because I can't be on our service. So I installed an HD antenna up in my attic, and I get great broadcast service out of Owensboro. So I get all the ABC, NBC, CBS's, all that. The big questions I get, though, are how do I get the game? And I'm not a huge sports fan, so it's kind of like, I don't really, to be honest. Sling TV, there's a number of over-the-top streaming devices that will support, I guess it's, what is it, like SEC, and, you know, I'm going to have to put together a script of how to address that question, because in here I talk about the Jago Homes. Well, we were over there at their grand opening and trying to promote our services, because we were able to get in there and have first dibs on that whole development. And Scott Jago specifically has thanked us so much for doing that. And I'm sure you can relate to that, Paul, of when you're building these homes and you're building an entire neighborhood for video, internet, and other service providers to not be able to be there when those homes are being put in and sold. It makes it difficult sometimes, and so they're very appreciative of the fact that we offer those internet services, and we're there to help them out. So yeah, I think what we will probably see next year for sure is trying to position ourselves as the more modern technology with the fiber optic services, educating customers on cutting the cord, and where the future of internet is. We'll be the ones helping to facilitate that.
But the people that want the 100 or the 1 gig, they're just people in.
All right, so the 100. So I said the vast majority of the 50. Yeah. There's probably, what is it, like maybe 11% that are the gig, and those are the gamers. Okay. Those are like they compete in competitions, and so the upload and download speeds and the latency and all of these things are really important to them. So we have gotten a reputation out there in the community of being a very good platform for them. So those kind of hardcore gamers all want our service. Some of the folks that I know that do work from home, engineering, people that work with very large files, graphic imagery, really appreciate our service, because it would have taken them hours to try to upload something with some other service, where with us it takes just a few minutes to get it up and post it to wherever they need to put it. And then the 100 is kind of like maybe there are multiple kids in the house, like, I have 2 teenagers, and it's scary to me the number of IP addresses that now exist in my little world. If they have multiple teenagers, a demand for a lot of video streaming, they might want to go from the 50 to the 100. Usually the 50 is good for most folks, but if you have a larger family, so you can see that, let's see, what did I say, 80% and about 11. So there's not that much, about less than 10% really are the 100 meg customers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. And that's where I see too, I know Tony and I had talked about that a while back. The future probably is not so much in changing rates as much as it will be speeds and offering speeds. So another thing that I see in the future potentially is continuing to increase those speed levels that we offer. One of my last presentations to you guys, I talked about how we have a lot of capacity in the network. We should make use of that capacity and how to best serve our customers and stay as competitive as possible. And that'll be in that discussion too.
And nobody offers the other ones we do.
No, not for residential. No. Historically, that's always been reserved for commercial services.
And looking at some of those things, it would help us tend to know where to market our services to say, well, most of those people probably know what, but there are a lot of people that maybe not know what they could get by going to 100 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So
and what we're seeing too is just the rep. I have some reports from some of the industry magazines about how the adoption of internet services is continuing to grow, as you would imagine, cutting the cord. People are learning how to do that. I had a great discussion with one of the reps over at Best Buy. I went in there, he didn't know who I was, and so I was kind of like, oh, just tell me a little bit about this, these HD antennas, and tell me a little bit about streaming. And, internet service providers, who would you recommend? And so I kind of picked his brain a little bit of who he was thinking about, and I said, well, really, because, here's who I am, and here's what we do. And once I educated him on what we're doing, he was totally sold on it. And so I think the more of us having those kind of conversations and working with those folks, because they're the ones that are directly, people come in and buy a Roku box. Sometimes they may ask them, well, who would you recommend as a provider? Well, it'd be nice if they, said, well, if you're in this area, and that was the other thing that still kind of hurts us, is we're so limited as to where we offer services. You're like, well, when it gets to you, you're going to want this, but for now you can, do this. So let's see, the segment E, we're getting ready to complete construction on this. As a matter of fact, a good portion of that is already done. I do say in here that we expect completion to be in early March, but in talking to the contractor, there'll probably be some areas that will start to even roll out sooner than that, maybe even end of January, February. I shouldn't want to commit to too much of that. But that's exciting to me, is having those more than 200 customers that I went through and personally, reviewed, waiting for our service, and then starting to look at, well, okay, this fiber distribution hub in this area is ready to go. Let's go grab those addresses. Let's go contact those customers who said they already want it, and now go get them signed up and get them connected. So that's the process.
Except for Jagos, everything we've done has been overhead, right?
Not everything, no. There's been a good mix. I'd say like an 80-20. Tim, does that sound about right?
Yeah, we did some of the Hollow Heights, there's quite a bit underground over that area. It went pretty well. There's a lot of old underground facilities over there that we had to dodge around, but it went pretty well. I mean, it was one of the ones we knew we probably had the most problems with.
And we're very responsive to customer complaints about, a contractor hitting a line or something like that, and trying to work through all of that, so.
You're not sending underground over in Fieldcrest Crossings or Fieldcrest area? Underground?
I actually think,
We're installing new as the new development. I think as the old development, I don't know.
Someone was telling me the other day that I knew what there's, I said, what's that they're digging in your yard? And he said, that's OMU's fiber net coming in. It had little yellow flags, but maybe it was.
We'll put the conduit in for the, I think on the new stuff.
Okay.
now there is another provider that's rushing to put fiber into the ground in lots of places around the whole city. They're just slapping it in for whatever reason. They're not even offering services yet with any of it where I know that it exists. So I just feel like they're rushing to try to deploy it. We'll see how that goes. That'll be part of our discussion.
Sure.
And then you can see where some of the penetration levels are right now. So our first phase, where we went and did this the first time out to just test the waters, we're still at about 30% now there. Phase 2, where we kind of expanded a little bit more, we're 15 there. And then where we just launched this phase 3, we're up to 7 now. So total of all the areas that we're capable of serving, we're at about 11% penetration. And the financial models say that when we reach about 14, 15, we're good. Now 20 is our target, but 14 or 50 makes it financially viable for us. I mean, the cash flow right now, when I say cash flow, the revenue from fiber to the home right now is getting close to about $340,000 a year, just from fiber to the home now. It's pretty good. And growing. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, that is the agenda. We have a brief set of business for closed session. Ray, I'll read the closed session. We'll need a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel matters pursuant to KRS 61810 1F, pending litigation pursuant to KRS 61810 1C, with matters which are required to be discussed in privacy pursuant to KRS 61810 1K, including but not limited to KRS 61878 1CI and KRS 61872 6.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.